Welcome to the Resilient Earth podcast, where we talk with speakers from the United States and around the world about the critical issues facing our planet and the positive actions people are taking, from the tiniest of actions to the grandest of gestures, so that we can continue to thrive and survive for generations to come. I'm Leanne Lindsay, producer and host, along with co-hosts and co-producers Scott and Tree Mercer of Mendocino Whale and Seal Study, located on the South Mendocino and North Sonoma coasts. The music for this podcast is by Eric Alleman, an international composer, pianist, and writer living in the Sea Ridge. Discover more of his music, animations, ballet, stage, and film work at ericalleman.com. You can find Resilient Earth on Spotify, Apple, and Amazon podcasts, iHeartRadio, YouTube, SoundCloud, and wherever you find your podcasts. In this episode, we speak with marine biologist Adam Ratner, who is the Director of Conservation Engagement at the Marine Mammal Center in Sausalito, which is in Marin County, just north of the San Francisco Golden Gate Bridge. He began at the Marine Mammal Center in 2009, leading educational programs for high school students and visitors. For 50 years, as the world's largest marine mammal hospital, the Marine Mammal Center is leading the field in ocean health through marine mammal rescue and rehabilitation, veterinary science, and education. Expert teams from the center travel around the world to work with emerging first responders, and since 1975 has rescued more than 26,000 marine mammals. We talk about that and more coming up next. Welcome, Adam, to Resilient Earth Radio and Podcast. It's good to see you again.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's a real honor.
And my friends and co-hosts and co-producers, Scott and Tree Mercer of the Mendocino Whale and Seal Study, they know you guys really well too.
Mm-hmm. Excellent.
So we're glad to have you on today because there's so many great ocean events that are happening about the ocean. The Ocean World Ocean Day is coming up on June 8th, Sunday. So perfect time to speak with you about the things that you do there at the Marine Mammal Center about climate change and climate literacy and human-wildlife interaction. So tell us more about what you're doing and how you're doing it. I was so impressed to hear you talk there at the panel at the International Ocean Film Festival.
Well, thank you. That's so kind of you. So I've been fortunate enough to be at the Marine Mammal Center for the last 16 years in a variety of different roles. I'm a marine biologist by training, and really over the years have realized that I needed to move out of the laboratory, out of the boat, studying animal behavior and really thinking about ways that we can connect the dots for people of how they can take action and be a hero for their environment within their own community. And that's what's so wonderful about the work of the Marine Mammal Center. We run off of this community of support. We're able to give animals a second chance at life, but what we learn from those animals is hopefully able to keep them healthy for generations to come, in a sense, that I want to stop getting these animals coming in sick and injured. And my role is really to connect the science and research that we get, what's happening out in the ocean, with social science and behavior change research. So how do we actually learn from the people, not just learn from the animals? And then how do we empower people and get that message out there in a way that's really impactful? And there's very few places around the world that I think have the opportunity to do this, like the Marine Mammal Center.
And it's the 50th anniversary.
It is. We have done a lot over the last 50 years, 26,000 animals rescued, millions of people reached, and the next 50 years are even more vital now as we think about the threats that are facing the ocean, but also the opportunities that we have to create a healthier ocean for marine mammals and people alike.
Did you say 50 years?
Yeah.
50 years, yeah. We're
50.
founded by three people in 1975 and have grown. We rescued seven animals in that first year. Fast forward 50 years, we've got over 120 staff. We've got 1,400 volunteers that help support every aspect of our work. And we rescue on average around 700 to 1,000 animals a year.
Wow.
I was asking because I was there the week that it opened.
Amazing.
Yeah, I was taking classes at College of Marin. The center was a field trip.
Oh, that's so wonderful. Yeah,
Probably the first group in.
yeah,
How
we've been
cool is
very,
that?
very lucky to have such an amazing community from the beginning of all these intersections, students training at College of Marin, scientists that come and visit us. It really is a testament to the community coming together that we serve as this teaching hospital hub for marine biologists, for researchers, and budding stewards.
Teaching hospital. And just an overview of the Marine Mammal Center for our listeners who may not know much about it, even though I think you're the largest in the world.
We are.
But you have animal care, you have science and conservation, you've got education, and you've got ways for people to get involved through volunteering or educators, how they can get involved, and also how people can support. So why don't you explain a bit for everyone about the overview of the center itself, then we'll drill down.
Marine Mammal Center's work is really to advance ocean health. And we do that through those key pillars that you mentioned. So the animal care and the rescue and rehabilitation of sick and injured animals. We are the world's largest hospital for marine mammals. We then learn from those animals. So we were the first to discover different ailments that these animals face. So whether that's cancer in California sea lions or different toxins like domoic acid toxicosis, we're also learning from animals when we release them. So actually being able to put trackers, figure out the migration patterns, behaviors. And then there is this big teaching hospital aspect as well. So we're able to train the next generation of scientists and veterinarians. We have people from all around the world that come and train with us, take that back to their own institutions. And then the kind of more formal education, youth, students, and how do we really build that sense of stewardship, of understanding, early career pathway programs. And we do that for visitors. So anyone who wants to come through and visit us, we're free to the public, open Friday through Monday in Sausalito. And we've got lots of different tours and hands-on experiences for kids to middle school programs where we train middle school teachers on marine science curriculum. We've got volunteer programs and stewardship programs for high school students, for college students and internships. So lots of different ways to get involved. Our volunteers range from 15 to 97. We don't even cut it off at 97. So really lots of ways to get involved, and anyone can always find more information on the website, which is marinemammalcenter.org, on how to either visit or get involved with our work, no matter where you are around the globe.
As a matter of fact, on World Ocean Day, you've got a barking event.
We do. We tend to have a lot of different kind of themed events, what we refer to as Marine Science Sundays, where every month we'll have one of our marine biologists share on different topics. So we're celebrating sea lions in June. Most people might not realize, but almost all California sea lions are born the same month. They're all born in June, essentially, down at the Channel Islands. So we want to kind of celebrate that story a little bit, give them a little bit of a shout out for their birthday as well, but talk about why that's important, that all these animals are born around the same time, what it tells us about the health of the ocean as we study how those animals are being born, and what it means for what we might be able to see along our coastline in the coming weeks and months as well.
You also have a podcast there that I was watching you on episode 2 of Sentinels of the Sea.
Yeah, one of my colleagues, Giancarlo Rulli, has put together the Sentinels of the Sea podcast. We did one a few years back, and we're able to kind of bring it back and do some new topics. So really just rich stories of the work that's happening. The thing that I probably love the most about the Marine Mammal Center is that every day is its own adventure. You don't know what these animals are going to do. So all of a sudden in the last few years, we've started seeing all these whales coming into San Francisco Bay when we had never seen them really before coming into the bay. And what does that mean? And what's the deeper science there? And a chance to kind of dive into those stories, diving into things like zoonotic diseases, avian flu and COVID and all these things that have gotten our attention over the last few years. And how can marine mammals be sentinels for ocean health? And what does it tell us about human health as well? So some really unique ways to tell these stories that might not come front and center when you think about marine mammals, these kind of cute, adorable, charismatic megafauna, animals that maybe you see a fair amount of sea lions. You go to Pier 39, you can see 1,000 of them, but there are lots of animals that are threatened or endangered that are right along our coast, like the Guadalupe fur seal. How do we bring people's love and sense of awe and wonder for marine mammals to a deeper level where they can start to see the mysteries that are around these animals, the threats that might be under the surface, and the opportunities to actually be involved in helping to care for them or protect their environment? Because we find the conversations around marine mammals, they're coastal, obviously. It's where you can see them, but we live in this connected ecosystem, and human health, animal health, environmental health is all connected under this one big 1L picture. And it means everyone has something to play in that story moving forward.
Scott and Tree, why don't you describe too some of the work you do and how you interact with the Marine Mammal Center?
Sure. Well, we do a daily census of not just the numbers, but also the behaviors of just about any cetaceans that go by our coast, and many are within view, right from the shoreline. We interact great deal with Bill Keener, who you must know, and
Love him.
yep, and he has an intern now working specifically on those gray whales that are entering the bay. Josie?
Josie.
Josie,
Yep.
yep. Anytime we do see a cetacean, I use whale alert, and I believe you get that directly. It goes
Correct.
right to the Marine Mammal Center. So yeah, we're in daily communication through that particular app and other ways. When we see bottlenose dolphins, Scott immediately contacts Bill, and we try to get photos for photo identification of them. We've been doing this now for 12 years.
Just amazing work, and it speaks to it takes a village to do some of this stuff. These animals, they don't stay in one location. How do you finish the puzzle in a sense? Because you've got these pieces in different areas of the coast. You've got different elements that people and experts can bring to the conversation. And that's really how we understand the mysteries of ocean health and the opportunities to protect these animals that are in our own backyards. So a huge testament to the work that you're doing, collecting all that data and feeding into this bigger picture that not only the Marine Mammal Center is using that data, but people all around the world rely on this to be able to answer some key questions about marine mammals.
And absolutely. And the marine mammals can tell us a great deal about the overall health of the ocean, which we know is critical to life on this planet. So it is important to monitor them, to see, like you said, try to understand the threats that they're facing and what we can all do collectively to help protect that environment and allow them to thrive.
And you've both mentioned ocean health a couple of times. So describe what is indicative of good ocean health, and then what are the signs that you see that when it's not healthy?
So one of the things with marine mammals is they're really ecosystem indicators, because marine mammals, they eat the same food that people do. They breathe the same air, and they're swimming in the same waters that we swim in. So they give us lots of clues. I would say one of the biggest indicators is the presence of food, and healthy food at that. So are animals of the right size as we do monitoring for whales along the coast? Are they skinny, or are they normal size? As we think about animals washing up on beaches sick and injured, are they malnourished, or are they facing different diseases or things along those lines? The presence of toxins or trash and pollutants and plastics is an indication. The other aspect is a little bit more indirect, I would say, which is around things like temperature of the water. So you're not going to be able to necessarily see a sea lion come up onto the beach and be able to tell if the water is warmer than normal. They're pretty resilient, just like we are when you can drive and you might experience a 10-degree temperature change. But the food that sea lions and seals and whales depend on is much more sensitive. So we're able to get a sense of, is the food moving deeper or farther offshore in search of cooler waters? And what does that tell us about the big ocean food web and the health of our ocean ecosystem as almost a proxy through our seals and sea lions? So those are some of the things that we're looking at, and obviously it leads to a few of the big threats that marine mammals are facing. You're facing things like climate change. Ocean temperatures are warming, the water is getting more acidic. That's playing a huge role in things like the food supply. kind of tied to climate change. That warming water is expanding. So you've got sea level rise, and that's shrinking or making some of these breeding beaches and resting spots more vulnerable for the animals. We see that a lot with the elephant seals and harbor seals. You've also got things like toxins and pollutants that are getting into the water. And I mentioned we were the first to discover domoic acid toxicosis back in the 1990s. This is something that can affect people. We work closely over the years with groups like the California Department of Public Health that you see a sea lion come in with this toxin. It can cause seizures, it can affect the brain. Treatable if caught in time, but what we can do is we can actually talk to the Department of Public Health and have the fisheries shut down. It's almost like the canary in the coal mine example, except we're able to save the canary a lot of the time. So different ways that we can study ocean health through the lens of marine mammals. We're very, very lucky in California. We have arguably more and diverse marine mammals than any other place around the world. So it gives us a lot of puzzle pieces, to use that metaphor again, of what's happening along our coast and what we can do to help address it and make it even better.
Scott and Tree were in a documentary a couple of years ago called Washed Ashore about the UME, Unusual Mortality Event back then. And that was by a couple of Berkeley students. And it seems like now, from what I've been hearing from you guys, from you, Scott and Tree, that there's that event possibly happening again. And Adam, speak to this too, but what is happening with the whales along our coast right now?
What Adam was just saying about the health of the ocean reminded me in the late 70s when I was back east working with the College of the Atlantic in Maine. We had an expression that when the marine mammals began hitting the beach, we're going to know we're in big trouble. Well, for decades, I've been watching them hitting the beach, and I'm not sure it's sunk in yet with a lot of people that were in big trouble. And now with the UME, it just ended, and we may start again with gray whales. We had so many gray whales, and the pinnipeds. They often get forgotten by the public in some ways, but we've had a lot of sea lions from the domoic acid and so forth. So yeah, there's quite a bit going on that's not well.
Adam,
Yeah.
you guys have gone through a few events recently, with one specifically that washed up in the San Francisco Bay and others too. Could you enlighten us on what happened there again?
Yeah, so let me take a little bit of a step back, because
Okay.
starting in around 2016, 2017, we started to see more whales coming into San Francisco Bay. So gray whales and humpback whales in particular. And these weren't necessarily sick animals. They were healthy animals coming into the bay, but we just had never seen them really. They were off the coast. So this really kickstarted a lot of monitoring that the Marine Mammal Center, other partners did to try and understand why. Why were they coming into the bay? What was happening here? And what are the benefits of this? And what are some of the new threats and risks that they face? And the kind of short story is they were coming into the bay because the bay was healthy. There was lots of good food. So humpback whales were coming into the bay and eating. Gray whales were coming in to the bay. But that poses some new risks as well. San Francisco Bay is a huge port. There are massive amounts of ships that are coming through, and some at high speeds as well. So we started to see some of these trends around things like ship strikes. That would be a problem, particularly with humpback whales. We also saw entanglements become a really big problem, particularly with things like Dungeness crab fishing gear, that the humpback whales were essentially shifting their normal schedule and where they were, and where it used to be a really peaceful kind of division. You had humpback whale season and you had crab season. They were now overlapping, and the gear is really dangerous. So we started to see these opportunities for coexistence, but it required changes. At the same time, the gray whale story started to pop up, where we started seeing gray whales coming into San Francisco Bay or right along the coast, and they were extraordinarily skinny. Typically, the way I describe this to young students is, with gray whales, you've got your favorite restaurant and you've got your home. It just so happens that their home is kind of down in Mexico. That's the breeding ground where they have the calves, they raise their young. Favorite restaurant is like Alaska. It's a good distance to get to your favorite restaurant, but you're not eating during that swim or that drive. So if you've got an animal that is really skinny in San Francisco Bay, it's because their favorite restaurant was probably having problems. And what it turns out is where they're eating up in Alaska and Canada and the Arctic, it's warming. It's warming twice as fast as every other place around the world. It's shifting the ice cover. It's reducing the amount of food, or it's shifting the amount of food even farther north. So these gray whales are having to drive and swim farther to get their food. They still got to get all the way back down to Mexico, have their babies, and then swim all the way back up to get to their favorite restaurant again. And essentially, the gray whales, they were running out of gas on that drive back up and that swim back up. And they were coming into the bay to try and find some food. And luckily enough, we had food, but we have other things. We have boats that are going by at high speeds. So we started seeing massive numbers of these gray whales washing up onto beaches dead, either due to malnutrition or ship strikes.
And I just wanted to point out that the panel that you were on there at the International Ocean Film Festival, there was another woman there from the Marine Mammal Center with you, and you were all talking about positive things.
Yeah.
And one of her stories was how happy she was to see the engagement with the shipping industry in slowing down, not only slowing down their ships, but altering their paths according to the paths of the whales.
Absolutely. And this is what is both amazing and so difficult about our work, because we've built systems that our society runs off of based on consistent information. We've had stable systems, for lack of better words, very predictable patterns. When might animals be? Where are animals? And things like climate change are shifting those. And we're having to learn on the fly and adapt. And it's really hard to shift global systems. At the same time, we've seen an amazing receptiveness on so many fronts for the whales in the bay. So we've got this whole network of ferries and shipping containers and all these groups that are sharing data through Whale Alert and letting us know when animals are there so that they can adjust things. They're voluntarily reducing their ship speeds. They're shifting the fishing season for Dungeness crab so that it's not a threat to whales, or shutting it down if there are too many whales in the area, or using new, safer, whale-friendly gear when they try and catch those things. So we're seeing a huge community around helping to respond to these things. Sometimes because there are things happening in the moment, we see whales that are getting sick before we can come up with solutions. And that's what's been happening the last few years, particularly with the gray whales. To get back to the original part of this story, the last few weeks have been incredibly traumatic, to be really honest. We've seen 14 whales die in the Bay Area in just the last few weeks.
Oh, that's tragic.
So luckily, we've got a team that goes out, we evaluate these animals, we try and figure out why they died and learn from death. We're not able to get the answers in every case. Sometimes the whale is inaccessible, or sometimes they're decomposed and we can't collect certain data. But we do know that malnutrition is playing a role in some of these. The animals are struggling to find food, which ties in to the previous issue that the gray whales faced in 2019 through 2021. And we know that a few, unfortunately, are facing things like ship strikes as well. It's hard to know if the ship strike happened before or after in some cases. And typically with some of these, they're also malnourished. So probably it wasn't the ship strike that was the bigger issue. In a sense, it might have been the final straw that broke the camel's back, but this was an animal that was already struggling. So trying to figure out, how do we tie this puzzle piece together of scientists that are studying whales way up in Alaska and Canada and the Arctic that are at the feeding grounds and noticing changes up there. Scientists that are down in Mexico that are studying the birthing patterns and calving rates, and then everything in between as these whales are traveling. And that's why the monitoring that's happening up off the Mendocino coast is so critical. And it's why these partnerships across industry, across nonprofits, government is so important as we try and keep these animals safe, because the gray whale population in particular, that unusual mortality event in 2019 through 2021 dropped the population by, I think, close to 30% in just a few years. They did jump back up over the last few years, but now we're seeing at least higher numbers in the Bay Area. We haven't seen that trend like we did in 2019 yet, with other strandings along the Washington coast, the Oregon coast. So it might just be that we're seeing a higher number in the Bay Area, but it's not representative of the bigger picture. It certainly tells some stories about what's happening in the Bay Area, though, that require a deeper dive. And that's why Kathy George, the person you mentioned who was on the panel,
Kathy George.
Bill
Yes.
Keener, members of our
Bill
amazing cetacean conservation team are doing every day out on boats in the Bay Area to try and answer those questions.
They also had a pretty high mortality in the Mexico area, 91 this year, which was higher than even the highest number during the UME. Mexico's highest count in dead gray whales was 88. They've exceeded that this year. But you're absolutely right about not too many up in Oregon and Washington. But there's obviously, a cause for concern here, and it's we're so appreciative of the work that the Marine Mammal Center does in connection with the California Academy of Science. You guys, you scientists are out there every day trying to figure out what's going on and to help this population.
That's what I was going to say too, how encouraging it is that you're sharing data with all these other agencies and with Scott and Tree, and they're sharing it with you. And because of the way that any discussion about climate and climate change right now seems to be being eradicated off of so many government websites that people need to find out the information so you know what actions you can take to maybe mitigate or help the situation. And Scott, you were about to say something.
Yeah, there was a bit of an unusual temperature anomaly that we had reported to us from the lagoons, was that the water was a bit cooler this year in the lagoons. So some of the pregnant females were taking the calves south and around and into the Sea of Cortez, where the water was a bit warmer. And there were released reports of mortality in that area too. What you've been talking about inside the bay, on the face of it, it seems like an impossible situation. You've got ferry boats on a schedule zipping from the Embarcadero over to Marin and back, tourist boats taking tourists out to Alcatraz and back, and then in a different direction, you got boats, enormous boats going from the Golden Gate to the port of San Francisco and the port of Oakland, and all the tugboats that help them in and out, and then the tourist boats. So it just seems impossible. Like there should be a National Guard back to direct traffic in there.
Yeah, as I mentioned, there's never a dull moment with the Marine Mammal
When they
Center's
talk
work.
about having that huge sailboat race in there, that just turned my hair white.
Yeah.
And I used to sail on the bay too with my brother. We'd sail out of Berkeley and go over to Tiburon and Angel Island and other places.
And I think one of the things that gives me hope in the sense when we think about how heavily trafficked this is, what an opportunity to see whales. I mean, people want to go out on whale watching boats all the time. And arguably one of the best whale watching boats you can go on is the typical ferry in San Francisco Bay. We've mentioned Bill Keener's name a bunch. He studies everything from the humpback whales and gray whales to the smaller harbor porpoises. Best place probably in the world to see harbor porpoises is you stand on the Golden Gate Bridge and you look down. That's literally where our scientists are doing our research. Like, there is an opportunity here as we think about coexistence where people have this opportunity to connect with wildlife in a really powerful way and arguably a really easy way. Like just take public transportation and you can see whales, but there are systems that have to change, and it's not going to be the status quo. We can't do everything the same, but I would argue that doing everything the same might not be the way we make progress on a wide range of different issues. That it's not about sacrifice. It's about progress to finding a way that we have happier lives, healthier ecosystems, and new opportunities that people probably didn't even dream of that they had when they think about visiting the Bay Area.
Mm-hmm. Good point.
It's one of the reasons that Scott and Tree too, they do all of their whale watching on the cliffs, Point Arena. They don't.
You don't even need to get out on a boat to see the gray
No.
whales in particular. Even the humpback whales. That's been one of the big shifts. Humpback whales used to stay a lot farther offshore. You had to get on boats to see them, but there are all kinds of opportunities to see humpback whales these days from land. Just get to a high place and lots of different resources out there to find those best locations, if you will.
Absolutely. Just last Friday, well, another place we usually do most of our observations from Lighthouse Road in Point Arena.
Mhm.
That does extend about 2 miles out into the ocean. It's a great spot. But in northern Sonoma County at Salt Point State Park, there's Gerstle Cove. And just last Friday, as we're watching and maybe hoping still for gray whale mothers and calves, but what do we see but 4 humpback whales less than a mile out? Less you
Yeah.
could see it with your eye. Of course, the binoculars help. And a couple of years back, when there were a lot of anchovies in the area, there were so many people at Gerstle Cove. There were 3 groups of feeding humpbacks, and the people didn't leave, Adam. They
Yeah.
stayed for hours watching these humpbacks lunge feeding, and it was an amazing day.
Like these are not places that you think of whale watching. That's how lucky we are at this
Yeah.
point. And there are ways that we can make this coexistence possible in a way that's really beneficial for so many different partners and groups throughout the area.
Even right off a sea ranch here, there was reports of orcas treated. You guys hear about that?
We did. We did. They were seen off Shell Beach on the Sea Ranch and then off Timber Cove as well
Aha. And
recently.
the other thing I did want to mention is about this ropeless gear for crab fishing. Scott and Tree, you guys know a lot about that too. You've been connected to some of the people that have been developing that technology.
Our common friend, Zach
Exactly.
Cliver.
Zach Cliver.
Retrials.
Yeah, Rich Rial's up in Washington. Zach's in Bangor, Maine, where we're from, and from Maine anyway. And yeah, Zach, our friend Zach, got himself involved in that
Now getting
at the
it
risk of his life a few times.
adopted by fisher folks, though it's going to be a challenge just because of the cost of the gear. But I think there may be other ways that foundations might come in and help support the transition. I'd like to find out more if that's even a possibility. Have you guys heard anything about that, Adam?
So Kathy George, the Marine Mammal Center, they sit on the Dungeness Crab Gear Working Group. So they're part of the kind of collaborative that's looking at when the fishing seasons make sense. So some of those closures that have to happen, monitoring the whales, also supporting some of these things around gear. You're exactly right that one of the biggest issues right now is the pure cost that it takes when we think about these industries and these businesses that have been set up and doing things for decades and decades and decades. There is cost to change, and they need support. They need tactical
They
and
do.
technical support, and they need financial support if they're going to be able to make that switch. No one wants to hurt whales. None of these groups, whether it's the shipping industry, whether it's the fishing industry, have any animosity towards them. It's just trying to find
Right.
that balance, and how do you transition some of these things that are so tough to move in a case, whether it's big ships or whether it's schedules for transporting goods and people, or whether it's the gear. Right now, obviously, there's some limitations with funding from the government. So that's an area that probably isn't going to step up as much as a lot of people would want them to on some of these issues that carry real benefit for communities that help support the global economy, in a sense, both local and global economies, I should say. So the hope is that philanthropic organizations, and there certainly are some, have been stepping up, but we need to ramp up awareness, we need to ramp up opportunity, we need to ramp up funding across the board for some of these big things, whether it's in the shipping industry or whether it's in the fishing industry.
Let's go back to the engagement part and aspect of what you do, because we have so many tourists and travelers who come to the San Francisco Bay Area. They come up the coast of Marin and Sonoma and Mendocino and further north, Humboldt. Help people understand ways to interact with some of the marine life.
So as I mentioned earlier, we're really lucky in the Bay Area and throughout California, I would say, for the opportunity to see lots of marine mammals, different types of marine mammals, and different experiences of marine mammals, I would say as well. So let's start maybe with the one that gets the most attention, which would be Pier 39. There were 2,000 sea lions at Pier 39 on one day last year.
Wow.
You're what? 15 feet away from them. Um, and that was a perfectly natural thing in a sense. Like no one brings the animals, no one feeds them, no one keeps them at Pier 39. They have chosen to come and use that as a resting spot for the last 35 plus years. And it's a chance that in a downtown urban hub, you have a chance to interact with wildlife that isn't possible elsewhere. So a great place to see them. They put on a good show in a sense, barking and jumping on top of each other and all the things. So that's one place that on your touristy trip where you want to go to Ghirardelli Square and get a sundae and you want to do all these other things, you can pop by Pier 39 and see this wildlife. There are lots of other places, obviously, that are more natural settings for them that they go to, whether it's the elephant seal rookeries along our coast, which are some of my favorites. So if you're in the Santa Cruz area, a place called Año Nuevo is absolutely stunning. You hike out over sand dunes, and this is one of the major breeding grounds for elephant seals. So every winter is when you can see thousands of elephant seals that are the males fighting with each other, like a National Geographic special. You see the babies being born, nursing from mom. Same thing happens down around Hearst Castle, San Simeon, and then Point Reyes is the other big breeding ground for elephant seals. So every winter you can see kind of the breeding part of that cycle, but other parts of the year you can see them molting or resting up on the beaches. There are harbor seal rookeries. I forget who on the call had mentioned Sea Ranch. But Sea Ranch is the home of a rookery or a breeding ground for harbor seals.
Yes, I did. In fact, this photo behind me is
there you go.
stretching from Wallala. That's the river right there. And then back over here is the stretch of Sea Ranch. And I even ride my horse right past that rookery area. And we just went through the birthing season, and I actually ride with another woman, Laura Court, who is, as you know, she's a docent there and teaches all the other docents and trying to help people understand when it's especially birthing season to have as little interaction as possible, especially dogs. Watch your dogs.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that the Marine Mammal Center has been doing research on over the last few years. So we've got data for every animal that we bring in. We'll rescue between 700 and 1,000 animals a year. So we have a sense of why they're coming in, what are they getting sick from, where are they coming in, what beach within our 600 miles of California coast that we oversee from the very tip of Mendocino to the very bottom of San Luis Obispo. And then what are the interactions that these animals are having on the beaches prior to being rescued? Because they might come up onto the beach with maybe a piece of plastic caught around their neck, but then they might also be engaged with by people on the beach that can cause additional stress or harm. Or there's the potential for people getting too close to these animals and actually scaring a mom and pup away. And you wind up having this abandoned pup. And unfortunately, our data over the last few years has been rather consistent. It's around 30%, 30% of the animals rescued by the Marine Mammal Center face some form of disturbance or harassment on the beach prior to being rescued.
Ooh, that's a high
So this
number.
is a huge number. We're talking hundreds of seals and sea lions every year that are being disturbed on the beach. And what we did is we combined that data that shows what are the problems, people getting too close, maybe trying to feed the animals or pour water on them, thinking that they need to be in the water. Mostly good intentioned behaviors, actually, just really misguided and harmful in the end. And we paired that with actually public surveys. We went out to beaches. We asked people about their thoughts about marine mammals, what they would do if they saw one, things along those lines. And we realized there are two predominant camps or kind of archetypes of people out there between both residents and tourists. There's the wildlife protector, which is by far the most common thing that we saw. These are people that want to help these animals, but they don't know the right way to do it. And they're kind of defaulting to the things that are less helpful. So they see an animal on the beach, it's making a sound, and they run up to it to try and figure out what's wrong. Well, it could be that that was a baby and its mom was just in the water getting food and was going to come back, but the presence of people now surrounding this baby animal makes it too scary, and mom doesn't come back, and you now have this 2-day-old harbor seal pup that's become abandoned. Same situation with dogs off leash, where maybe it's not the people, but a dog is really curious. it now becomes too scary and you have an abandoned animal. Maybe it's people that are trying to help these animals because they see a sea lion up on the beach and they think maybe it's like some of those dolphin documentaries or whales. And it's like, oh my God, they shouldn't be out of water. I need to help it before it dies. So they try and drag an animal back into the water. But seals and sea lions are very different. They not only breathe air like the whales and dolphins, but they spend half their lives sometimes up on land. And just like with a person, it's really tiring and energetic to have to swim. So if an animal is already sick with a disease or some type of ailment, being dragged can physically hurt them, but also being put in the water means now they got to exert more energy. Again, all of those behaviors are met with the best intentions to try and help the animals, but we're seeing hundreds of these cases. So that's one of the things the Marine Mammal Center is really trying to do is how do we empower this community of wildlife protectors to know to do the right thing? And it's really quite simple. Keep your distance, at least 50 yards, so half a football field. If the animal is reacting to your presence in any way, lifting its head, vocalizing, you're too close. Keep taking a step back, give it its space. Keep your dogs on leash, just because dogs and seals, just like dogs and any wildlife, they get excited. They try and get close. And by the time you get the dog back, perhaps that damage is done. And then call the experts. So the Marine Mammal Center has a hotline, 415-289-SEAL. We try and make it easy for you. Let us come out there. Let us evaluate the situation. Just because a seal or sea lion is up on the beach doesn't necessarily mean it's sick. But if we're getting too close, if we're causing harm, we're either making that animal sickness worse or we're causing new stress onto that animal. So keep your distance. Let the experts know. We can get out there, evaluate it. And if that animal needs help, we'll bring it to the world's largest marine mammal hospital. We'll do any test you can get at a human hospital, and we'll get it better. But we need the community's help. They are our eyes and ears here. And they're the first line of defense to hopefully get that animal on the best path of recovery possible when they might have the opportunity, unfortunately, to make it even farther into the negative and make it harder to give that animal the chance it needs.
In fact, we have a whole network of people here along this coast of Mendocino and Sonoma who are able to help the Marine Mammal Center because there's a truck of yours up here at the Wallala Veterinary Center. I see it all the time, and I've seen it dash out too to go on an assignment. So there are ways for people to call and alert you to let you know they've seen something, and there are people along these coasts that can go into action and they know what to do.
Yeah, and while our hospital's based in Sausalito, that's kind of the headquarters where we want the animals to come to if we can, where we can do all these fancy tests and we can give them long-term care of a couple weeks or a couple months to get them better. We've got volunteers stretched out among that 600-mile range so that someone's available. If you're in Mendocino County, it's not me caught in 5 hours of traffic to try and get up there and help. Same thing down in San Luis Obispo.
All
So
the way
this is
down
ways-
there.
Yeah, so this is ways that people, if they're really passionate and they live along any of those coastal counties that they want to get involved, there are volunteer opportunities. There are other groups that help support our work, like Seal Watch and some of these others that keep coming up. So lots of ways to get involved, even if you're not in the Bay Area, which is where the Marine Mammal Center might have a little bit more, I don't want to say name recognition, but presence, just because we've got the physical site there. But our work really stretches that 600 miles. And I would argue is actually global in terms of the impact, the collaborations that we're having. So no matter where people are when they're listening to this, there are ways that you can probably collaborate and work with the Marine Mammal Center if you're really passionate about helping to protect these marine mammals or the ocean.
Talk about the connection to Hawaii as well and how people can actually visit your center there in Sausalito.
Yeah, so we've been, as mentioned at the very beginning, around for 50 years in California. We were founded in 1975, and around 10 years ago, identified that while our work in California was incredibly impactful, we've been able to save tens of thousands of animals. There was an animal that really needed help, and no one was really present there, and that was the Hawaiian monk seal out on the Hawaiian Islands, the most endangered seal or sea lion in the United States. At the time, their population was declining by a couple percentage points each year. They were down to close to only 1,000 individuals. And NOAA, the government organization, and a few community groups had been doing really great work, but they didn't have the infrastructure to be able to help save some of these animals. So what we did is actually build a hospital on the Big Island, right near the Kona airport, taking all of those decades of experience working with elephant seals and harbor seals and sea lions and brought it out to Hawaii. And I'm thrilled to share that right now that population has been growing. So instead of dropping a few percentage points each year, it's now at one of the highest levels we've seen in the last 30 years. There are over 1,600. I think more importantly, when you look at that population, so there are around 1,600 of them, 30% of Hawaiian monk seals alive today are alive today due to conservation efforts from groups like NOAA and the Marine Mammal Center. So we've been able to truly save a species with the work that's happening out there. So that's the one other area besides California where we've got an active hospital, but we've got the research projects and things happening all around the world. The Hawaii hospital, it is a little variable for your ability to visit just because we're dealing with an endangered species. There may or may not be animals on site at any given point in time, but you can always visit our hospital in Sausalito, California, right next to the Golden Gate Bridge in the national park, the Marin Headlands. We're open Friday through Monday. It's free admission and lots of opportunities to do tours, to look around, to actually look into rooms like our laboratory, our fish kitchen, to talk with marine biologists. So I highly recommend for anyone who's in the Bay Area to come and make a trip out and see it. We could have upwards of 200 animals at our hospital at one time. So a chance to see animals like elephant seals, sea lions, hear stories of the sea otters that we're taking care of. So a really unique experience that you can't find a lot of other places.
The otters that you said you have, where do they come up from?
So typically with the sea otters, we're going to be rescuing them either down in San Luis Obispo County or Monterey and Santa Cruz County. Those are really where the otters predominantly are found. Their population used to stretch all up and down the California coast. They were hunted to near extinction over 100 years ago. So at this point, we rarely see sea otters north of San Mateo County within our range. And then they start up again once you get into Oregon and Washington State. But typically, sea otters that are getting caught in trash, they might be facing different diseases. Things like toxoplasmosis is a big one that we see. Shark bite wounds, unfortunately, is something we do see with some of the sea otters. But predominantly, we're picking up animals from that southern part of our response range. And hopefully, over time, the sea otters are going to be able to kind of start to rebuild that range a little bit and be able to expand. I'm sure we could do an entire thing on sea otter natural history and some of the threats that they're facing. They are limited. They're kind of boxed in a little bit in that southern range, and that's playing a big role in why they're still a threatened species.
Yeah, I worked the cowfish and, well, it's called cowfish and game back then. It's cowfish and wildlife now.
Yeah.
I worked the cowfish and wildlife census
Mm.
in 77, I think it was. And I had Point Sur. There's a Navy base then. I needed an escort to get in and out of there just to count otters. And the count then was under 1,500. You see it now, it really hasn't. If you stop and think how many years ago that was, the population really has not really taken off in any huge bubble.
Yeah, I mean, I'm pleased to at least share that it's at around 3,300 right now. So it's double what it was from, I mean, you said 78 or so. So, I mean, we're talking close to 30 years, but 3,300 is not a lot. You would
It's not a
expect
whole lot.
significant more growth. And it's been stable at that low 3,000s for, I think, probably the last 10 years or so. And it really is that they just can't grow north right now because of the lack of the kelp forest, the
Thank you.
predators with sharks, same thing down south. So there are much bigger conversations happening about relocation efforts, and is there a way that people can help support the otters get into these more historic areas? But those are complicated. They take a lot of time. They're not always effective. They come with other impacts as well. But those conversations are and have been underway for many years as a way to try and think about how do we get them over that hump, because we are talking decades now where the population hasn't been able to move off that endangered species and threatened list. And they're all in one area, really prone to an issue. If there's an oil spill that happens in that area, if there's a massive heat wave that affects the food supply, there's not a lot of resiliency if your entire population's within a couple square miles, in a sense.
One tanker having trouble is the whole population right there.
Exactly.
One question that you pretty much answered, but I was wondering was, is the center a destination? You said people are free to come down there.
Yeah.
I never knew if you were charging, or do you have a large donation bottle out there for people? You said you were attracting a lot of people.
We definitely do have the donation box, and we will gladly accept whatever people want to put into that as a nonprofit. It's how we're able to support our work, really. But we are a destination. So we're open Friday through Monday, year round. So think kind of long weekend in either direction. It's free admission to come in. We do ask that you just reserve a free ticket through our website just so we can help monitor traffic flow more than anything else. And then we've got various tours that do have a little bit of a fee. So if you want a deeper, richer experience, you can get a guided tour with one of our marine biologists. We've got behind the scenes experiences where you might have the chance to go into the fish kitchen and see how we make all the food for the animals, or look into the lab a little bit deeper. But you have the chance to come out and just explore and see the world's largest marine mammal hospital. And it's really transparent. So you can look into these rooms, you can see the animals, you can see our veterinarians, volunteers taking care of them. Highly recommend for anyone who loves wildlife or loves science, a chance to come out and learn about the animals in our backyard, learn ways that you can help protect them from the threats like climate change and disturbance, and be able to meet some like-minded folks that want to help protect the ocean as well.
I've heard that the center is self-sufficient. You don't receive federal funding.
So
Last time I asked that question was when Elon Musk arrived on the scene and funding was getting cut left and right.
Yeah, so we are a nonprofit at the Marine Mammal Center. We run off donations. It's around 90% of our budget comes from private donations. There is some federal funding that comes in the form of grants, just like anyone can apply for these things. So I've gotten grants from NOAA before to do climate change work. The US State Department funded our work. So there are elements that are federally funded, and to be upfront, that we've had that funding cut. We've had some positions through the AmeriCorps program that folks might have heard was drastically cut, impact our work, and a staff person. We had a grant prematurely terminated that was focused on climate change. But we're really fortunate at the same time that a bulk of the vast majority of our work is supported by people like you and me, and folks that view the value of this work and want to contribute as little as a couple dollars into our donation box when they come and visit, to higher amounts and become a member and a supporter in that way. So we are supported in that way. We're weathering a bit of a storm, just like I think a lot of organizations right now, and definitely can benefit from more funding to be able to do all this work, and particularly some of these threats that are I wouldn't even say emerging, but are here. The things like the whale entanglements and the whales that are getting sick in the bay, the disturbance work, climate work. But it is just a testament to the community that we're much more reliant on people like you and me than we are on federal funding, which is great right now.
And we totally agree.
I know the quality of the work that this Marine Mammal Center does. Scott and I are monthly contributors, and I get newsletters. I get so much communication from a TMMC letting me know of all the wonderful things going on. And I personally couldn't think of a more worthy organization to donate to. I am not a trained rescuer, but in this area, I know many of them, and sometimes I get to help out, just as an extra body, just there. And it's incredibly rewarding work. And to see that these volunteers, they are very highly trained. They have training sessions and they attend, and they are so skilled. And I'm just maybe some two strong arms to help maybe pull that big cage up the hill to get into the truck. So I do encourage anyone listening today, if there's any way you can support this organization, please do so.
Thank you. That means a lot to us. We really appreciate all the support.
Tree and Scott, I'm so glad that you do what you do. And Adam, in these last few minutes, is there something really important that we haven't covered that you'd like to convey to the audience?
There have been pieces of this throughout, but I just want to reinforce, it really does not matter where you live or what you do. You have the opportunity to connect with marine mammals. You have the opportunity to help protect the ocean in every action that we do. So whether it's when you're out along the coast, some of those safe wildlife viewing tips, so keeping your distance, putting our phone number in your phone so you have it, 415-289-SEAL. So you can always get that expert advice if you want to try and help the animals. To the actions that we take with our voice, so raising awareness about the threats these animals face, issues like plastic, issues like climate change. We have an enormous power right now as individuals to come together as a community. And that is where I think our power really lies, is not as these individuals in our own day-to-day lives, but using our voices together to ask for change and to help really steer things towards less plastic in the products, that we can live healthier lives and have a healthier environment. We can also ask for more renewable energy, for less fossil fuels, for the things that can help create a better life, not just for the seals and sea lions. I think that's going to be the gravy. That's the bonus. But a cleaner air for us, cleaner water for us, healthier ecosystems and economies in a lot of cases when we think about some of the businesses along the coast, and safer, more longevity in our fishing industry that's suffering. So there are lots of ways that we can come together across all these roles and sectors that make a really big difference. So connect with us, connect with others in your community for the thing that you are passionate about. But I would say that no matter what it is you're passionate about, it connects back to the ocean in some way. And that's the opportunity that we have to create that healthy ocean for everybody as we look forward.
Thank you, Adam. You really summarize things so well. It's obvious that you've been doing this quite a while. We appreciate your knowledge, your passion, and everything that you're doing. And thank you for taking the time to be with us here today. Scott and Tree.
Yeah, Leanne took the words right out of my mouth. I was just going to say exactly the same thing, for sharing your knowledge, your experience, and your passion with us today. Really appreciate it, Adam.
Well, likewise, thank you for the opportunity to join, and thank you for all the work that your team is doing to help spread awareness on all different issues related to the environment and the ocean. It's wonderful to have these collaborations and these partnerships and this microphone to be able to connect people with stories that we know are really impactful, and can lead to action down the road.
You said it. We have a voice and we can raise awareness, and so can others. Right?
Yeah, it's great to meet you. We're not too far if we could fly down there, but it's going to take a week to get anywhere from up here.
Well, any of you are welcome, as well as anyone listening. Come out and see us in Sausalito, marinemammalcenter.org for more information. But we would love to have you and host you at the Marine Mammal Center anytime.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Resilient Earth podcast, where we talk about critical issues and positive actions for our planet. Resilient Earth is produced by Planet Centric Media, a 501c3 nonprofit, and Seastorm Studios, Inc., located on the rugged North Sonoma coast of Northern California. I'm Leanne Lindsay, producer and host, along with co-hosts and co-producers Scott and Tree Mercer of Mendocino Whale and Seal Study, located on the South Mendocino and North Sonoma coasts. The music for this podcast is by Eric Alleman, an international composer, pianist, and writer living in the Sea Ridge. Discover more of his music, animations, ballet, stage, and film work at ericalleman.com. You can find Resilient Earth on Spotify, Apple, and Amazon podcasts, iHeartRadio, YouTube, SoundCloud, and wherever you find your podcasts. Please support us by subscribing or donating to our cause.